pleasant day, everyone. I am Regimate Galagala, a second-year college student at Northeastern Mindanao State University, Cantilan Campus. Urgently, I am going to discuss about behavioral learning theories under Chapter 4. And I was assigned in Lesson 4, which is Neo-Behaviorism, in Tolman's Purposive Behaviorism and Tolman's other salient principles. Without further ado, let us begin the discussion. Firstly, I am going to tackle about the history of neo-behaviorism. As behaviorism developed, one more sub-branch came out to fill in the gap between behaviorism and cognitive learning beliefs. It is called neo-behaviorism. Notable psychologists that contributed much in the development of neo-behaviorism included Edward Tolman and Albert Bandura. The neo-behaviorists were more self-consciously trying to formalize the laws of behavior. They believed that some mediating variables into the established stimulus-response theory contribute much to learning. Let us move on to the main topic, which is the purposive behaviorism. Purposive behaviorism is a branch of psychology that was introduced by Edward Tolman. It combines the study of behavior while also considering the purpose or goal of behavior. Tolman thought that learning developed from knowledge about the environment and how the organism relates to its environment. According to Tolman, a behavior is never merely the result of mindless SR connections. He insisted that all behavior is directed because of a purpose. Hence, all behaviors are focused on achieving some goals by cognition, an interesting variable. He affirmed that mental processes are to be identified in terms of the behaviors to which they led. So, Tolman provided an experiment about rats inside of a maze. In his experiment, two groups of rats were put in mazes for 17 days. The first group of rats was fed every time they found their way out. The second group of rats was non-reinforced. The rats did not receive any food from days 1 to 10, even if they have seen the endpoint. Later, it was observed that in the first 10 days, the rats developed a cognitive map. Hence, from day 11 onward, they were motivated to perform and look for the endpoint faster than the first group to find food because they were hungry. On his experiment about the rats, rats are using a cognitive map that helps them to think critically on how to find the way out as faster as they can, rather than the first group. Somehow, it takes time to make their plans attained, but their mental reconciliation helps them a lot to win the race to find their way out as faster than the other group. Later on, I am going to discuss about the cognitive map. Now let us move on to latent learning. Latent learning is a form of learning that occurs without any visible reinforcement of the behavior or associations that are learned. Latent learning is a kind of learning that remains or stays with the individual until needed. It is learning that is not outwardly manifested at once. According to Tolman, it can exist even without reinforcement. He demonstrated this in his rat experiments, wherein rats apparently learned the maze, forming cognitive maps of the maze, but manifested this knowledge of the maze only when they needed to. Next to tackle is the cognitive map. So what is a cognitive map? According to Tolman, in regards of the term cognitive map, it is a mental illustration of the layout of the environment. It helps to build a cognitive map which more detailed and comprehensive in facilitating our learning. One of the examples of cognitive maps is the Tolman's experiment about the rats in the maze. If we are going to apply it in human learning, since a student passes by the same route going to school every day, he acquires a cognitive map of the location of his school So when transportation rerouting is done, he can still figure out what turns to make to get to school the shortest or easiest way. According to Tolman, it was clear that all behavioral behaviors are goal-oriented, including those for animals. The key difference between behaviorism and the purposive behaviorism of Tolman is that behavior is goal-oriented. Now, we are going to tackle about the Tolman's other salient principles. The first one is behavior is always purposive. He meant that all behavior is ignited to accomplish a specific goal. In its purest sense, a demonstration of learning is the outcome of possessing a purpose to show it. Therefore, learning is always purposive and goal-directed. Tolman asserted that learning is always purposive and goal-directed. He held the notion that an organism acted or responded for some adaptive purpose. The second one is behavior is cognitive. The expectations that underlie and guide behavior are cognitions. This means that an organism is mindful of the connections between specific actions and certain outcomes, which is the cognitive map. One of its examples is cognitive maps in rats. In his most famous experiment, one group of rats was placed at random starting locations in a maze, but the food was always in the same location. Another group of rats had the food placed in different locations, which always required exactly the same pattern of turns from their starting location. The group that had the food in the same location performed much better than the other group, supposedly demonstrating that they had learned the location rather than a specific sequence of turns. So, the third one is reinforcement establishes and confirms expectancies. Tolman also underscored the role of reinforcement in learning. According to Tolman, learning deals with connections between stimuli and expectancies or perceptions, representations, needs, and other intervening variables. On its explanation, reinforcement is not essential for learning. Tolman concluded that reinforcement is not essential for learning, although it provides an incentive for performance. In his studies, he observed that a rat was able to acquire knowledge of the way through a maze. For instance, to develop a cognitive map even in the absence of reinforcement. Tolman believed individuals do more than merely respond to stimuli. They act on beliefs, attitudes, changing conditions, and they strive toward goals. Behaviorism. What is a behaviorism? Behaviorism is an area of psychological study that focuses on observing and analyzing how controlled environmental changes affect behavior. The goal of behavioristic teaching methods to manipulate the environment of a subject, a human or an animal, and an effort to change the subject's observable behavior. Behavior involves motivation and cognition. A cognitive theory of learning postulating that behavioral acts have a goal or purpose that selects and guides the behavioral sequence until the goal or purpose is attained. That would be the end of my topic. I hope you gain learnings about Tolman's purposive behaviorism and other salient principles. May God bless us all, always.